Tifawin, everybody. Tifawin to your mind, your body, and your voice. And welcome back to Tifawin Podcast. I'm Chaymae Hachimi. Today, I want to start with a crack in a wall. Few months ago, I was working on a creative activity. I was trying to get my students to look at their surroundings differently. So I gave them what I thought was a simple task. I asked them to go outside, walk through their own neighborhood, and bring back a story about something they found. I fully expected them to come back with stories about a strange conversation or maybe an old door they hadn't paid attention to before. But when we came back together in our own circle, one boy raised his hand and said that he didn't even make it down the street. He told us he stopped in his own family yard, looked at the wall near the kitchen, and for the very first time, he noticed this big crack running from the window all the way down to the floor. He had asked his mother about it, and she just laughed. She told him that crack had been there since before he was born. He had walked past it every single day of his life, but he had never actually seen it. And then, looking around the room at other students, I decided to ask them, did he discover it today, or did the crack finally decide to show itself to him? Taking into consideration their age, that's a beautiful question because it makes us think about a word we use all the time and usually without thinking much about it, which is discovery. When we hear this word, we picture old ships with huge white sails crossing dangerous oceans, or people cutting their own way through thick jungles. Basically, we have turned discovery into extreme adventure. We have made ourselves believe that it requires distance, passport, or a very large budget. We treat it as something that happens out there, far away from the everyday reality of our kitchens, of our own daily life activities. But what if distance actually has nothing to do with it? Because if we look at the word itself, it leaves a very different set of clues. I always think of words as places where all things are uncovered. When you clear away the dirt, you get to see how the people before us understood the world. Take the English word discover. It's direct. It means to take the cover off, to remove the lid. It suggests that the thing you are looking for is already right there in front of you. It isn't missing, it's just hidden. You see this same structure across different languages. In French, you have découverte, where the prefix undoes the action of covering something for protection. But the Arabic language does something even deeper with this idea. The word is اكتشاف, coming from the root kashafa, meaning to uncover. However, in Arabic, kashafa carries a physical, almost personal meaning. It's the exact word used when a doctor examines a patient. You cannot examine someone from across the room. You have to step close and look carefully at the signs. In some spiritual beliefs, kashf refers to a state of understanding where the veil between the human heart and the truth is left. It's never about traveling to a new destination. It's about clearing your own vision so you can finally see where you are already standing. When you place these languages side by side, a really detailed picture appears. You start to realize that discovery isn't an action you perform on the world, it's an action you perform on yourself. That student didn't change the wall. The wall had been carrying that crack for 2 decades. What changed was his attention. He removed the cover of habit. And habit is a very thick veil. Our brains are actually built to stop seeing things we come across every day as a way to help us survive. Because if you had to process every single leaf on every single tree on your way to work, your nervous system will be overwhelmed. So the brain creates shortcuts. It paints a fixed picture of your own living room, your neighborhood, and even the people you love. We look at our friends or our parents and we think that we know them completely. We stop asking them questions because we assume we already have the answers. We place a cover over them made of our own ideas. And the moment we do that, discovery dies. Which leads me into some slightly uncomfortable ground and ask the question, how do we actually recognize when a real discovery is happening? Because we often mistake invention for discovery. We think we are uncovering a universal truth, when in reality, we are just putting our own desires onto an empty space. Think about how many times you have been completely sure that you figured someone out. You studied their behavior, connect the dots, and build a brilliant picture of their personality in your head. You think you have discovered their true reason, only to find out months later that you were completely wrong. You didn't discover them. You invented a character and forced them to play the role. All this happened in your mind. True discovery requires a huge amount of modesty. It requires the willingness to stand in front of something and admit that you don't understand it. Most of us hate doing that. We are rushed to label and group things because empty space and not knowing make us anxious. But you cannot pull back the veil if your hands are already full of your own conclusions. And this brings me to the darker side of the word, because throughout history, discovery hasn't always been an innocent act. In fact, it has often been a deeply harmful one. If we trace the English word back to the 14th century, discovering someone didn't mean celebrating their talents. It meant betraying them. It meant revealing a secret with bad intentions, like a spy discovering a plot. So, how did it become this bright, optimistic word we print in school textbooks today? History happened. Power happened. When Europeans' empires began sailing to different continents, They came across lands filled with millions of native people in complex societies. But they couldn't call their actions invasion or thief. They needed a story. So they took this old word, whipped off the blood, and used it again as the age of discovery. By using that word, they performed a language trick. You cannot discover a place where people are already sitting down eating dinner. You can only arrive there. But the word allowed the newcomers to erase the local reality, basically saying that a place didn't exist in the official record until their eyes looked at it. That historical shadow hasn't disappeared. It has simply changed over time. You can hear it in the way language is used in everyday life. Imagine a remote worker who travels, arriving in an ordinary neighborhood. They walk around, buy a cup of coffee, and later post online about how they just discovered this amazing hidden little street. They use the word happily. But think about the person pouring the coffee or the family who has lived on that street for 3 generations. To them, the street isn't a discovery, it's reality, it's home. In modern usage, the word almost always suggests a difference in power and the advantage of the outsider. Context changes everything. A child discovering that mixing blue and yellow makes green is a moment of pure magic. An adult discovering that their rent is going up is a moment of panic. The process of uncovering is exactly the same, but the emotional meaning is completely different. Which makes me wonder if there is a healthier way to interact with the unknown, a way that doesn't require planting flags or claiming ownership, but is based on respect rather than control. I think to find that we don't need to look very far. We just need to look at the history of craft right here in Morocco. Let's think about the master artisans who create our detailed zillige work. If you watch them cutting small pieces of clay into stars in shapes, you might think you're watching a genius inventing something out of nothing. But if you talk to them, their way of thinking is completely different. In the traditional Islamic arts, the artisan does not believe they are inventing the pattern. The special geometry already exists in the mathematical structure of the universe. Their work is simply to carve away the extra material so the pattern can be seen by the human eye. They aren't claiming the geometry, they are serving it. So, what would our lives look like if we approached our own minds with that same way of thinking? What if we stopped believing in the constant pressure of modern life to always improve our personalities or invent new versions of ourselves every year? What if we viewed personal growth as an act of zillige, stripping away the outside expectations, the fear passed down to us, the things society teaches, not to build something new, but to uncover the geometry that was They are all alone. So, this is the hardest lesson to learn as an educator. When I stand in front of a classroom, the urge is always to give the students the answers because it feels quick and practical. But forced efficiency is the enemy of real learning. If I tell a student exactly how a concept works, they have learned a fact. But if I give them a messy text and let them struggle with it until something finally clicks in their own mind, that is a discovery. A fact can be forgotten, but a discovery permanently changes the structure of the brain. You simply cannot speed up the process. Sometimes it happens in a split second, and sometimes it takes 20 years for a crack in the wall to finally become visible. You can't force it, you can only learn to pay attention. Our cities are speaking to us. Our bodies are speaking to us. The people sitting across from us at the dinner table are speaking to us. We are just usually too busy listening to the noise in our own heads to hear them. We cover our lives in thick layers of habit and then complain that nothing exciting ever happens. Starting at our own phones for a digital adventure while completely ignoring the real world breathing right next to us. As we bring this conversation to a close, I don't want to offer a net summary or a 5 step plan for being better at noticing things. Life doesn't look like that and doesn't really work in bullet points. Instead, I want us to go back to that yard in that house, back to that 13-year-old boy, realizing that his own home was full of street secrets he had never bothered to notice. He didn't need to cross an ocean to find the unknown. He just needed to stand still and really look at the thing he was looking at. I want to leave you with 3 questions to think about this week. First, what is something in your life right now that you have placed a heavy cover over it simply because you were too tired to keep looking at it? Second, if discovery isn't about changing your location but about clearing your vision, what's waiting patiently in your own house or your own neighborhood for you to finally notice it? And finally, the last question. When was the last time you allowed yourself the difficult privilege of being a beginner in your own life? Okay, these are the 3 questions I want you to think about and sit down with today, because the world doesn't need to be new in order to be discovered. It's only need you to open your eyes. I think that's it for today. Tifawin.